Right, afternoon, folks. Hopefully you can hear me. So I'll be talking about botnets, command and control, but in particular how and why the bad guys will be targeting web application servers. So a little bit about me. I'm a VP of Research at Damballa. I'm also on the board advisor for IO Active. And I spent quite a few years now on application security, pen testing, and most recently focusing on botnet attacks and new technologies there. I want to provide some special thanks to a couple of my guys, Sean Bodmer and Lance James, who helped pull together some of the screen captures of the different tools that are being used by the bad guys. So one of the things I saw just on Tuesday as I was going through my presentation and realizing that I'd written an hour's worth of presentation for a 45-minute slot, my response was to look at the news stories, delete a whole bunch of slides, and then add some extra ones for some reason. And I think this is quite interesting that, so over the weekend, TechCrunch got compromised. They have about 250,000 visitors per day. Because they're compromised, many of the automatic systems kicked into place that actually were blocking people from getting to the website. Now, they fixed that vulnerability and wiped up the exploit codes within 12 hours. However, 4 days later, they were still being blocked by multiple companies. And this sort of leads into really what I'm going to be discussing about the compromise of the websites and use for botnet command and control has many different implications, including your business continuity, even after you clean up the attacks. So diving into the first area, really looking at the bots and the bots themselves. Now, at a high level, everyone here pretty much has everyday access to somewhere between 100,000 and 2 million bots on a daily price. So, for example, if you want to hire 100,000 machines today as your cloud, unfortunately running on victims' machines, it's going to cost you about $200 for 24 hours. Or you can normally pick up about 5 minutes free, try before you buy use. Now, if you want to own that entire botnet, then you'll find sellers for between $10,000 and $50,000 for a botnet of a couple of million machines. Failing that, if you want to just build them yourselves, there's plenty of tools, and I'll cover quite a few of the tools today that will allow you to not only build up your own botnets, but also manage them and to create the malware that you need to perform functions on the victim machines. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the distributed infrastructure of command and control. Now, I think a key part in really understanding where the threat comes from is that in the old days, if you wanted to break into an organization and do some damage to a server or whatever, you'd recon the site, you'd select which are the most vulnerable vulnerabilities, you'd recon the actual targets, you'd test the defenses, and then you'd exploit the weakest vulnerabilities, the lowest hanging fruit. Where we are today, it doesn't matter. What happens is that the bad guys take a list of possible victim sites, they point their systems at that, they run every single vulnerability that they have. And if one succeeds, great. If two succeeds, great. If all 200 of those exploits succeed, great. It doesn't matter. Okay. And so they're not really not really trying to test the defenses. They just go in, they run everything they've got, and if something worked, fine. If it didn't work, they move on to the next target. So if you like, move from the low-hanging fruit type of exploitation to the, if you like, the Monte Carlo method of attacks. Now, the ecosystem that supports all of this is pretty complex and pretty broad. Now, if I start right at the bottom, if you like, inside this ecosystem we have infrastructure providers, so using hacked servers, providing server redundancy and botnet victims that you can actually host your infrastructure of running a botnet on top of those. Then you have the hosting providers, providing bulletproof hosting of your domain names, friendly ISPs that will not respond to law enforcement from certain countries, malware hosting and provisioning. Then you have the delivery providers, if you like, the software as a service providers, iframe injection services, email phishing campaigns, you name it. And then above that, managed service providers, DNS hosting, fast fluxing services, search engine optimization attacks, and injection there. Then professional services, guys that are going to provide the malware, the exploit packs, the translation services. If you're creating a phishing site, for example, and your native language is not English, you might want to hire someone to do the translation for you. That exists online. Okay. And then you have, if you like, the big end of the wedge, the affiliate schemes. So every single one of these types of services are available and have affiliate models where other people can go out and sell and resell these things. And the resellers themselves, focusing on laundering and trading of these types of systems. So the ecosystem is big, okay. And when I look at the size of this, the amount of money that's made in these areas, estimates are somewhere around about the $100 billion a year type market, okay. And that's it's a lot, but also, that is a sizable amount of spend in money that's being made from here, and the spend and innovation that's being made by these guys that are actually making money from these services. So when it comes to web application security and botnets, I guess one of the key questions is why, how, and what for. Now, so why, as a bad guy or command and control server person, why would you want to target a web server? First of all, it's a server, okay, which means it's probably reliable. So it's got high speed, lots of threads, long uptime. It's up constantly and it's easy to locate. Now, these are all key things that you want as a bad guy for hosting your command and control infrastructure. It's also better connected, so it's a lot easier to find vulnerabilities and a lot easier to find vulnerabilities that can be exploited, are accessible, high internet speeds, everything like that. And one of the key parts that a lot of people underestimate is really it's trusted by the internet. So a domain, a host, a website that's been up for quite some time is generally trusted and whitelisted by multiple sites and multiple content filtering technologies. So by compromising these types of web services, it means that you inherit that reputation. So what are the most common ways that the bad guys are actually owning these systems for command and control? First and foremost, really is exploitation of searchable vulnerabilities. What this means is that they don't need to touch your website initially. They can just do Google searches or other types of searches across the internet and just find sites like yours that are potentially vulnerable. Now, when you dive a little bit deeper, then most of those vulnerabilities that are being exploited are lying within third-party applications and code that's on those websites. Custom exploitation or custom web app vulnerability exploitation is a little bit rarer, and it really depends on the type of vulnerability. So cross-site scripting, for example, being used for local file injection type vulnerabilities. Next on the list, default accounts, followed by brute forcing of key accounts, password guessing, exploiting lax file permissions, and really the last area is permission escalation of stolen accounts. So getting a list of accounts that actually work on the website and then finding out ways to escalate to higher levels. So what are these compromised servers actually used for from a command and control perspective? So first of all, it's a cornerstone of many of the largest and most important command and control infrastructure that's out there. It's also used to large and to great effect of brute forcing additional servers for command and control. So you're thinking of a big powerful server, has a high number of threads, it has good internet connectivity, it makes it a perfect platform for actually launching attacks and trying to brute force into other web servers. It's also valuable for bypassing blacklist filters, reputation hijacking, and also if it's a virtual host on a server, then once you compromise that particular virtual host instance to compromise and infect every other domain and host that's on that same server or same server infrastructure. This is becoming more and more popular, particularly for cloud-based service providers. So, moving on to penetration, you probably wouldn't want to park there when the wrecking ball came rolling your way. So what are the most sort of common themes, if you like, to penetration testing tools, if you like? So first of all, mass exploitation. So there are botnets that are out there that exist solely to build other botnets. So for example, the Asprox botnet is specialized in mass SQL injection. Now, a lot of the times when you look at SQL injection, there's a concept that, well, how would someone take the time to actually brute force and enumerate my entire SQL database? And yes, if you were running one machine, it may take 5-10 days to actually enumerate the entire database. Okay, well, if I shrink that down to 10,000 machines now pointing at you running simultaneously, I can conduct the entire attack within 30 minutes. Okay, so there's a scaling thing that's going on here. There's also little work that's actually required, and I'll actually run through quite a bit of the types of tools, and particular things like auto routers. So once I have access to a machine, a host, I can use one of these auto router scripts that automatically give me all the permissions and install all the tools that I need. Things such as Google Dorkable attacks, and I'll cover that in more detail. But many of these tools, in fact most of these tools, come from web interfaces. However, what you'll find is that the botnet operators, because they make an awful lot of money from this, tend to buy the premium versions of the web interfaces toolkits. So a question that comes up an awful lot of the time is, where do they get these new vulnerabilities? Okay, so on Monday, when I was preparing for a plane to come down here, one site which I check out quite often is this site here, injector.com. And so on Monday evening, what you see here is a list of all the latest vulnerabilities targeting web servers and all the exploits that are now being created for this. Okay, so this particular website, and is one of many, specializes in just taking all the latest full disclosures or bug track disclosures and quickly knocking up the exploits. Okay, and the exploit format is is structured and it's available in a plugin format. Okay. Okay. So you're probably familiar with things like Millworm for other types of more penetration testing type exploits and things like this. These types of websites exist purely for web application vulnerability exploitation and develop multiple plugins for multiple different types of tools and infrastructure. Now, SQL injection, I think it's always an interesting one. It's always seen as a hard and difficult exploit to carry out, even once you find a vulnerable site. Frankly, if you want to launch SQL injection, there are plenty of tools out there that will do the whole job for you. So this one here, SQL I Helper, automates everything. So here on the top side, we see the URL that's what they want to target. They click the inject button, and then comes to a different page. Click on get tables, and it starts enumerating and pulling back all of the tables there. And so eventually we get to this final screenshot here, which is actually the authentication passwords to the database. Okay, and that's all just been done automatically. So 3 clicks and a few minutes waiting, then you have full control, all the permissions necessary to take full control of the server. Now, the tools themselves also get a little bit more sophisticated. So here is a Chinese version. You take a new vulnerability or a suspect string, you type it into one corner, it uses Google, it automatically pulls back a list of all different sites that may be vulnerable to it. It starts sorting those sites and prioritizing on the likelihood that they are actually vulnerable. And then you click go, and it starts cycling through every one of those sites and starts enumerating them. Okay, it finds out whether they are actually vulnerable or not, and it starts working through. So eventually you end up with a full enumeration of the table, and it actually starts pulling back the data. Okay, so here is another fire and forget tool. You start with a loose vulnerability description, click start, it will find all the vulnerable sites, stack rank them, and then start exploiting them. Now, those are 2 tools, here are 4 more. Okay, so these are all sorts of tools that are publicly available, easy to get hold of. Most of these ones are free, and luckily these ones are in English. If you want to play around with them on your own sites, then what you'll find is that they're actually on par, if not better, than many of the commercial tools that you will find from penetration testing vendors. Now, Google Dorks. So one of the key things really is being able to quickly scan through an entire web application or website looking for vulnerable paths. And so what you'll see are, for example, this one here is from one of the Pastebin websites, just one example, which lists several thousand possible URIs. Okay, and you take this type of information, you just run it through your tool, you point it at a website and run through all these, and you're really looking for local file inclusion vulnerabilities. And these can be, come on. Okay, and there are tools and scripts that will take those big long lists and convert them into formats that are compatible with existing tools. So for example, on the left-hand side here, we have that list that's been passed through a Google Dorking tool and converted into a file format for the IJO scanner, or IJO scanner. And here on the bottom right-hand side, we actually see the tool actually running, cycling through multiple sites and trying several thousands of these links and looking for exploitable content in there. And all these tools, there's lots. So just looking up LFI vulnerabilities and scanners, so local file include vulnerability scanners. Plenty of them around, and many of them are very good and very efficient.